You're listening to episode 111 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness teachers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Barbara Larrivee joins us to speak about a daily dose of mindful moments, applying the science of mindfulness and happiness. As many of the guests on this podcast have shared, mindfulness doesn't begin and end on the cushion. That time for dedicated practice isn't a replacement for what is brought to the rest of our waking hours off the cushion, nor is the point of practice limited to what happens between the meditation bells. Mindfulness lives in every moment, in every day. Barbara Larrivee is an education professor at California State University. She writes about classroom and behavior management, creating learning communities based on respectful dialogue and authentic communication, and building reflective practice. Our guest today is Barbara Larrivee. Barbara, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Oh, glad to be here.
So let's jump right in. Why don't you tell us about your background and how you first encountered mindfulness?
Well, I have a story, and it seems to be similar to many stories where I had a breakdown. I guess I might even call it a meltdown. I was dealing with a lot of pressure in my personal life and in my work life. My mom had just died very suddenly, and I was under a lot of pressure at work to learn new technologies. I was going into online teaching. I was also broadcasting my class to remote areas, and it was all interactive. And so I think I was just in more of a stressful state than I realized. So I was driving in my car. I have a long commute to campus. And all of a sudden, I kind of saw these spots and the traffic was heavy. And I started to worry about, oh, am I going to get there in time? I have like 400 students waiting. And isn't technology going to work? And before I knew it, I was in the emergency room. So I pulled off the road and had my first, and thank God, only panic attack. And so I think myself, like many others, by this time I had a lot of skills. I was teaching teachers how to deal with kids with problems, and I didn't realize how much of a toll the stress was taking on me. I can handle this. I have all the skills. I teach other people how to deal with their stress. So after that, a really dear friend who had been a meditator for many years said, Barbara, you have to learn to meditate. And so she taught me a mantra, and that was my beginning.
So this book, what made you decide to write this? What's the story behind the crafting of this book?
Oh, that's quite a story. Because I have a background in humanistic education and also in statistics, not a usual combination, but I wanted to have the practices that I taught teachers be best practices. So I also wanted to have a research background, and I had started out not very successfully, but as a math teacher in an inner city junior high school, which sent me right back to grad school when I realized how unprepared I was to be teaching. And so the combination of the stress that I was under and realizing more and more the stress that my students who were teachers in a graduate program to get their degrees in special education, and my specialty was working with kids that have challenging behaviors. And so I began to realize how stressed they were. And with my own experience, I have to concentrate on trying to help teachers deal with their stress so they, in turn, can help their students deal with their stress. So the combination of my own meltdown and the realization that I needed to help teachers deal with their stress, those two paths converged into looking at meditation and mindfulness. So as I looked at the research, I was always trying to translate the research into something that was very practical. I learned very early in my work with teachers that if I asked them to do something that seemed overwhelming, they wouldn't do it. So I always had to make sure that whatever I was asking them to do was something not that I thought was doable, but what they actually thought was doable. So my whole career has been translating research into doable, practical strategies. And I'll give you one example that seemed to be very helpful for teachers dealing with challenging behavior. And all teachers are dealing with challenging behavior. But one of the things I recognized is when a teacher was responding to behavior that they didn't like, they usually did one of two things. They made a command or they made a criticism, and often they did both. Well, none of these really helped to curtail inappropriate behavior. But what was really helpful was to give them one very simple strategy, and that was shift from making a statement to asking a question. Ask a short, brief, simple, and non-blameful question, and make it an invitation for them to change their behavior rather than a command. So, for example, if someone was acting out, a teacher might say, "Is that helping the group? Can you think of something else you could do?" And that was an amazing strategy for teachers because they felt like, I can do that. And they got immediate results because they found they got far less resistance. So I'm segueing to my idea of a mindful moment. And so I wanted to translate the research into some practices that everybody could use, and not just folks who had the time to fit a meditation into their practice or had the inclination. And my belief was that people can be mindful. It's nice to have a meditation practice, and it's a great forerunner, but basically we have to act mindfully. So my book really was trying to extend the notion of mindfulness to taking mindful action. And as you know, everybody seems to be defining mindfulness in terms of meditation, and they're basically putting forth that it's being in the present moment with an attitude of non-judgment, but they don't really take it to action. So my mindful moment approach was to come up with something that was research-based that anyone could do, and people would have a sense that, oh, I could do this. I could start small.
So isn't it reflected then in the structure of the book? It looks like there are two parts. What's in each of those?
Well, the first part was looking at all the research. And because I was wanted to really, I guess, deal with a broader concept of being mindful and put it in the context of well-being. So as I was doing my research, I was not only looking at mindfulness, but I was looking at all the research in positive psychology. I was looking at the research in gratitude, on compassion, self-compassion, kindness. And as I did my research on mindfulness, one of the things that really hit me was that the most compelling research results were in what psychologists call the negative pathway. So it was dealing with anxiety, stress, depression, remuneration, all kinds of pain, all kinds of things that we want to curtail in order to be more mindful. And the research really did not support the idea that it helped at all on the positive pathway. which was making us more optimistic, making us more satisfied with our life, making us savor our moments of pleasure. And also, the research did not support that there was a long-term carryover effect from meditation to dealing with the stressful moments that hit us throughout the day. So I was also looking at what was happening in positive psychology and what was happening in the stress research and what was happening in the mindfulness research and trying to merge all of those. So hence the title, A Daily Dose of Mindful Moments, that you can spread out your mindfulness practice by doing brief research-based mindful practices throughout the day. And if you do that, you not only can enhance your ability to be mindful, but you can also stay in a more positive mindset and you can combat the stress that hits you all day long.
So, how is this approach maybe a little bit different than what might be found in other books?
Part of me had all this research and the other part of me had all these strategies. So it was quite a feat to figure out how to merge the two. So that was the structure of the book. So there's the research on mindfulness. There is quite a large section because of my background in research and statistics about, what does the research say about what can we expect from mindfulness meditation practice? And also the research on positive psychology and the research on self-compassion, compassion, gratitude, optimism. So I decided to structure the book so that all of the research was in the first half of the book. And I also decided to structure it so it would be more palatable for a general audience. So I pulled most of the research and put it at the back of each chapter and bulleted it. So someone could look at the research if they wanted to, and they could ignore it if they didn't want to. And I also put in each section what I called a research recap, which was just my brief translation of what does the research mean. So that was the first half of the book. And then the second half was translating it all into strategies.
So, making this a little bit more personal, just an exploration with your own practice, what does living a mindful life mean to you?
It means to continuously be not only being mindful, but also taking mindful action. It's easy to be in a mindful state and not necessarily take that to your actions with other people. So my belief is you really have to be purposeful and intentional about living the life that you want to live. And for me, living a mindful life is aligning with your own integrity so that your actions are in harmony with your beliefs and your values.
How has that changed things for you? What have you noticed in your own life about living that way?
Well, I noticed that I can keep my stress from escalating if I'm taking periodic breaks during the day. I used to be a person who was very driven. I had a long list of all the things I needed to accomplish in a day. And I had this running dialogue in my head. Okay, what have you got done? Okay, it's 3:00. And so I've been able to shift a little bit from that sense of being driven and sense that, I have to accomplish X amount in a day. So it's the reducing the stress. And also for me, and I don't know whether it was age related or not, but I started to wake up with sort of a kind of edge every day, even though by this time I had a dozen years of a mindfulness practice. And it just did not seem to be enough to keep me in that positive mindset and to keep me in a frame of mind where I could always be thinking of others as well as myself. So that's the second thing, that it lifted my mood. And once you lift your mood, all kinds of things happen. So I found that I could have more pleasure in my life and I could shift myself very quickly out of a frump with just a mindful moment. And the third thing, I didn't really talk about this initially, but the research was also saying that if you took brief breaks, it would make you more productive, keep you on task, keep you more focused. And also, there's a whole research based on varying your practice and the importance for how the brain works to have a novelty and variety. So that was another concept that I merged into the notion of a daily dose of mindful moments.
Barbara, are there any other thoughts you'd care to share with the listeners?
Well, I'd like to say that there are different ways that you can incorporate mindful moments. One way is to take a mindful moment that aligns with what you need. So a mindful moment could be something that gives your mood a boost. It could be something that you do for someone else because kindness is important to you. It could be something that's self-soothing because you're feeling bad because somebody just said something you didn't like. It could be relaxing. It could also be energizing when you have an energy slump. It could be stress reducing. So these mindful moments serve multiple purposes. So one way to think about a mindful moment practice is to do individual mindful moments throughout your day and have them meet your fluctuating needs. Another way to have a practice is to have a theme for a day. And so this has endless opportunities for you to align with what's important to you. So, for example, you could have a day of patience, and you have to define what does being patient mean to me? Is it being patient with that one person who presses my buttons, and what am I actually going to do to be patient? Or I might have a gratitude day, so that then all of my mindful moments that I took that day would follow that theme. Another way to implement a mindful moment practice is to think about a situation. So let's say I'm a person who kind of has a quick draw. And if someone says something I don't like, I automatically say something sarcastic, or I say something that's character assassination. So maybe that's something I want to work on. And so I might spend the whole day having a strategy that would help me deal with that. So the strategy might be just taking 3 deep breaths before I respond. The strategy might be saying, oh, I'm going to take a little time right now before I respond. It might be saying a little mantra to myself. You know, this person wants to be accepted and loved just as I do. Just something to shift myself out of that negative frame of mind. So that's the third way to apply it to a situation or an area that you want to improve in your life. And the fourth way, and these are not all mutually exclusive, they can all be combined. And the fourth way is to establish rituals. And a ritual is something that you decide to do every day. And so mindful moments lends itself to a morning or an evening ritual, or some ritual you might want to establish at the dinner table to shift the conversation. Typically, when we get together, we're all talking about what a bad day we had and what went wrong, so that the conversation could be easily shifted by the impetus of a positive or a mindful eliciting question like, what was the best thing that happened to you today? Who did something kind for you? What did you do for someone else? And immediately it shifts that orientation to focus on what's negative and what didn't work and what I should have done and what somebody else did to me.
Great. Thank you very much for that. For folks who are interested, there is more in the book, A Daily Dose of Mindful Moments. So please come to the episode page for this episode. You'll be able to pick that up there. And our guest today, Barbara Larrivee. Barbara, thanks so much for being here.
And thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode, You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.